want to ask him, so that he can dwell more on the subject. That's the idea. So if you have some question, I've asked madam to, I would say, tabulate or collate them together. So also here Srinivas is doing it from SVC. So SVC is here, Kasturba is here? Yes. Okay. Where are the students? Okay. And then Varunda College? Okay. Which other college is missing? The other is here? Yes. Okay. So all he was an IAS officer, they introduced him formally. He's a bureaucrat, he's a politician, so he's seen everything. So what today India understands is the economics in terms of the ground reality. Also in this folder we have given sustainable development goals. Number 8 and 10 talk about the same. What do you expect? How does it work for you if India becomes the third largest economy? How does it matter to you if India is fifth largest economy? Please write that. And what do you want? What does it mean to you when you say recent work? So, into the policy making. So use this opportunity, write about it, and even in fact, he wanted it to be interactive, that you should always ask. But we are just capturing this first day so that when you're speaking to you, understand what the students want. So utilize the opportunity, write, and be free to ask. These are not many of us get opportunities to ask like this. So whenever you have a doubt, question, first write and then ask. All right. Also in the same folder, we've given you a glossary of economic terms so that you understand when you're speaking about certain topics, including inequalities kind of, you can just go through them and you can keep them. Don't have to return. You have to only return the questionnaire part. All right.
The rest of the participants to come in, and we'll begin sharply at 11:30. Those of you who have not taken a cup of tea and would like to have one, can quickly rush out, have a cup of tea and come back. Preferably don't bring the tea cups inside so that you avoid. Please make yourselves comfortable. If any of your friends have to arrive, kindly give them a call and ask them to come in, because we'll begin sharply at 11:30. There are some more participants on their way. And who all are from Kasturba and the other colleges? Kasturba form, I don't have to ask you. Yes. Welcome all of you. Good, welcome. But it is intended to be an interactive one. That is the reason we are waiting for the other participants. It is intended to be an interactive one. That is the reason we are waiting for the other participants also to arrive, so that they will not miss out any part of the session. Thank you.
Five minutes, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am glad to announce the arrival of the speaker of today, Dr. Jay. We have amongst us the presiding officer for today's proceedings, Dr. B. Gangadhar Rao Garu, who is President of the Economic Committee. We also have the President of Usmania Graduates Association, T.V. Gopalchari Garu. And we also have the Vice President of Exhibition Society, Sri Niranjan Garu. And the secretaries of the respective organizations, Sri B.N. Rajeshwar Garu, Secretary of Usmania Graduates Association, Sri Ranga Reddy Garu, who is Secretary of Economic Committee, and Sri Surendra Reddy Garu, who is Secretary of Exhibition Society. We also have the managing committee members and other senior members of all the three organizations. We also have the lady members to whom we extend a warm welcome. Sir, we have the students of the different colleges, constituent colleges of OGA from Hyderabad. Now, may I request Dr. Gangadhar Rao Garu and Sri Ranga Reddy Garu to escort Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan Garu onto the dais. We shall begin the proceedings of today. The traditional
Vande Mataram, Vande Mataram, Sujalam Sufalam, Malayaj Shitalam, Sasya Shyamalam, Mataram, Vande
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And now may I request
Sir, look here, sir.
Now, may I request the guests and the members from this planet by way of photosynthesis. May I now request the President of Economic Committee, Dr. Gangadhar Rao Garu, to deliver his welcome address and also introduce the topic of today's discussion.
Thank you, Aditya. Some of the new members might be wondering, normally we have Jyoti Prajwalan. In Jyoti Prajwalan, scientifically carbon dioxide is produced, but now we are nurturing plants which exactly absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen. That's what we have been doing. So before I come to the topic, I see a lot of young people. It's a routine, but I would like to give some 1 or 2 minutes of introduction. Sir, we all know Usmania University was established in the year 1918. It started 1919. Then, after a few years, 1932, some of the graduates at that time, they looked at the economic, educational, social backwardness of the Telangana, and they started an organization called the Usmania Graduate Association, for which presently Dr. Gopalachari is the president, and I have been previous president, and Harnath Reddy also was the previous president. One thing which many people are not aware, Usmania Graduate Association not only started some subcommittees, like we all know Economic Committee, for which I am president, is started by them in 1938. It also started a political committee, educational committee, and many of the members of the exhibition may be unaware that the political committee started by OGA contested municipal elections and also won at that time. But during the course of time, only Economic Committee continued, and Economic Committee created the present Exhibition Society, which is serving the great cause of education for so many decades. I will not go into all those things, etc. You know. Now, another important point is that India has made a very tremendous progress for last 50 years, I would say. I didn't say 75 years. For last 50 years, very tremendous progress in all fields. It could be agriculture, it could be science, it could be infrastructure, it could be technology. Very, very impressive gains. But for all of those who are not born in 70s and 80s, you are not aware. In 1970s, we were very, very deficient in the food. As MS Swaminathan used to tell, ship to mouth. We used to get under PL 480, we used to get food grains, and the food grains were distributed. So that was a very pitiable condition at those times. And over the time, now, today, we are so beautifully there. Today, India produces a staggering 330 million tons of food grains. Third in the world. Number one is US or China, then we are the people. Now, even though we produce 330 million tons, if you look at the efficiency, around 42 to 45% of the population of India is involved in agriculture and produces 330 million tons. For example, in the developed country like US, just 1.2% people who are doing farming producing 660 million tons, double. I mean, I'm not going to that one. So now coming to the important thing, because normally Economic Committee has been organizing talks for so many years. First thing was, we conserve the natural water resources for ecological and agriculture sustainability. We did that. Very nice, it was a very huge success. Why I say success? Because we involved again students also in that particular thing. Later, Economic Committee, Managing Committee decided to hold a seminar on energy, which is number one. So the topic, sir, for your information, Dr. Kar, is that economic implications of implementing renewable and alternate energy sources. It was a very nice thing. Now, coming to today's topic, for which I'm just going to talk. But even though we did so much, for example, in terms of digital transactions, last month, 7,100 crore transactions were done by everybody using. Great job. But today, 81.6 crore people are being given free food grains for next 5 years. Now this is paradox. And not only that, 30% of the people are living with a less amount, 80 rupees or 70 rupees per day. So, what needs to be done? So, I always believe, and I discuss also, before solving a problem, you should recognize there is a problem. If you close our eyes, oh, India is a great country, don't talk all this, it will not work. So, the stark reality is, we have to see there is a problem of disparate distribution problem is there. How to do that? It's a normal thing. What is called a purchasing power. If people have purchasing power, I remember some 15-20 years back, we used to purchase one palla, 100 kgs of rice in the house, we used to keep it there. Nowadays we don't do it. But everybody could not. So purchasing power is required. So purchasing power is not there because employment is not there. How to increase the employment? We have to prepare people who are ready for job. So Exhibition Society and Osmania Graduate Association also have been working out methods. There is no question of having the same old, BA. I don't say BA is a great BA honors or BCom honors or very great history, very nice subjects and very much required. However, they are not going to get you some jobs. So OGA and Exhibition are reorienting and changing some subjects, and then so that much more important. And today we are very, very fortunate, sir, that we have a person like Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan Garu, who has a deep insights, practical insights. See, there are two things. I can, sitting here, I am talking theoretical, but sir has got a deep practical insight into the things. So we are looking forward, sir, to address this particular issue. The topic today is economic and income disparities in the society, strategies needed. And some of the science students may not know what is economic and income. A person economically can be strong, but income may be less. Like for example, one person may be having a lot of holdings and lands, etc., may be there, but it may not be the income. So looking forward, without much talking, looking forward that I once again extend a warm welcome to all of you, especially the members of the Economic Committee, Osmania Graduate Association, Exhibition Society, and more importantly, respected teachers who have come. I'm very grateful to the teachers and thank you, students, because I'm not talking for myself. This is for you people. Tomorrow belongs to you people. So I think you are fortunate to have a person like Jayaprakash Garu, who is going to address this. Thank you very much, sir. May I now request Aditya Margam to introduce the speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Gangadhar Garu. I deem it a privilege to introduce the speaker of today, Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan Garu, to the audience. But how does one introduce a person about whom everybody knows a lot? That's a difficult task. A person is defined not by the material acquisitions or the intellectual accomplishments that he has, but by how he puts them to use in times of difficulties, when faced with a go or no-go situation or faced with a do or die situation. So, by this yardstick, I feel that Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan is a personification of clarity of mind, of competence, of courage, of conviction, of confidence and character. Many C's, sir, you should bear with me when I go into details about you, because we have a lot of students who I feel will be inspired by your life story. Dr. Garu was born in Maharashtra to parents of modest background. Doctor's father was in the railways and his mother was a homemaker. He was born there, and by virtue of his father's profession, I presume he traveled to many places, but the early part of his childhood he spent in Guntur and Vijayawada. Dr. Garu took his medical degree, MBBS, from Guntur Medical College. But soon after that, at the age of 24, he quickly became an IAS officer, which means that he was preparing for it for a long time. And to top it all, he secured the 4th rank in All India in the UPSC examinations. That, my dear friends, should be an inspiration to you all. Coming from a background which doesn't offer the luxuries of life, and still being able to make it to one of the top services in the country, and also securing the highest rank, one of the top 5 ranks, is a great achievement. So this I see as a sign of the clarity of mind. He must have pursued it right from the beginning. Otherwise, to be able to become an IAS officer at the age of 24, that too after pursuing a medical degree. See, if it was a lighter degree like arts or commerce, it would be understandable. But pursuing medicine, MBBS, and again becoming an IAS officer is something that is remarkable. He had clarity of mind. Then of course competence, that is what brought him to where he was in the beginning. Then, after a short span of 16 years of service, the sir held all the positions, the traditional positions of sub-collector, collector, assistant collector, collector and so on, and rose to become rose to become the principal secretary to the governor. In government, and not enough to simply have a change of team every now and then, but the entire process of governance needs to be thoroughly overhauled. And with that, HITEX city, and HITEX was going to be inaugurated in 1998, the Cyber Towers building. Dr. Garu left the service of the government in 1996 after 16 years of service in IAS. Now, to leave a prime service like that at the prime of your life requires a lot of courage. Conviction is one thing, saying that yes, this is what needs to be done, but to be able to jump in and do that requires a lot of courage, and that's why I described that he is a personification of courage as well. Having left the service, then he formed the Lok Satta Party and also the Foundation for Democratic Reforms, FDR, and he serves currently as its General Secretary. Then he also is the National Advisor for India's Future Foundation. Then there is a program called Youth Parliament Program, where it's an ideal platform for socially conscious youth to express their views, ideas, and to act as change agents in the national building process. The Sir has held several positions, and then he formed the Lok Satta Party. And he had the confidence to be able to go out and seek the mandate of the people, and he won the election from Kukatpalli constituency as member of the Legislative Assembly. So stepping off from the comfortable positions of senior bureaucrats, he has come into the life where he has to go out and seek the mandate of people, walking from door to door, going from street to street. So this is again an inspiration to our students, up and coming students, student leaders from both Vanita and Polytechnic College from these grounds, and also from the other colleges, Kasturba College, Sardar Patel College, and so on, from outside of the exhibition grounds. Now the list of accomplishments of Dr. Garu are it's a very long one. But some of the things that he has brought into place is the Right to Information Act 2005 was solely at his behest and initiative. Like that, there are several social reforms that have been brought into place. What is the highlight of Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan's ability is that he is able to analyze things critically and clinically and make recommendations unambiguously and directly. So this is what has driven us to seek him out and request him to come and deliver his talk. Because today we hope that he will be able to analyze what ails our economy, why there is disparity, and give us his recommendations in unambiguous and direct terms as to what could be the mitigation measures. Thank you very much, sir. Sir, please. I request our speaker for the day to take over and give us his address.
Thank you. English or Telugu?
English.
Youngsters, what do they want?
English.
Okay. Friends, first of all, thank you for your kindness and warmth and hospitality. I'm overwhelmed by that. Aditya has been extraordinarily kind, said a lot of nice things. Don't worry too much about that. I'm a great fan of the Usmania Graduates Association. I've said it umpteen number of times. In a country where people fragment, don't unite, find reasons why they should have factions. OGA and Andhra Mahila Sabha in Hyderabad are the two symbols of perseverance, service, and collective endeavor. And I deeply appreciate the work OGA has been doing for the past now 1930. I was reflecting on the year 1932, a very significant year in many ways. That was the year in which Francis MacDonald, the Prime Minister of Britain at the time, announced the MacDonald Award, basically a communal award, not only for the separate electorate of Muslims, but also a separate electorate on the basis of caste. That's what led to Mahatma Gandhi's fast unto death, and therefore the Pune Pact. Some kind of a compromise. An affirmative action policy of reservation was accepted. Instead of treating the Dalits as a separate electorate and choosing their own representatives, and casting those choosing their own representatives. And for an organization to sustain the spirit of nationalism and public service and collective enterprise for 93 years is quite remarkable. So I salute you for this wonderful work. And I thank the Economic Committee for giving me this opportunity to interact. I wanted to make it very, very interactive rather than didactic and in terms of a lecture. So in between, I'll try and make it interactive rather than give a boring lecture. I've come to the conclusion that people don't want lectures. Lectures are boring. Most often they lack substance. They lack cohesion. As somebody said, lectures are like, speeches are like bulls. Steel horns, a lot of bull in between. They're absolutely irrelevant. They go over the heads of people. But if you stimulate people to think, if you allow them to participate, hopefully the young people will imbibe some ideas based on evidence and logic, and that they'll make a difference for the future of the country. So let's straight away jump into the theme. Why should we bother about inequality? And is there inequality in India? Let's address these two questions. They appear to be self-evident, but some clarity will certainly help. First, about is there inequality? Dr. Gangadhar talked about 80 crore, 800 million plus people getting free food grains, and the paradox of it. Some of it is exaggeration. We don't have 80 crore people starving in India. It's politics. It's the necessity of appeasing the voters in order to get the electoral outcome. So we should not judge ourselves by those numbers. I keep hearing these numbers. They're more political polemics rather than substantive issues of criticism. A few numbers. Abject poverty, defined as something like $2 plus, a little over $2 per day income, has now come down to almost zero level. We are now at 1%. It's a remarkable accomplishment. That means for the basic, bare necessities of survival, 99% of families are okay now. 1% still are there. No, extreme poverty for a variety of reasons. 1% are there, but there's no country with 0%. So, while we should eliminate even that 1%, it's not too bad. And Dr. Gangadhar also talked about the UPI numbers. The fact that technology is now reaching the people, the poorest of the people, the most remote areas, and things that were unbelievably difficult to access 30, 40 years ago are now available to most of the people most of the time is a remarkable accomplishment. I remember my first visit abroad was to the Netherlands. Then on my way back to India, I went to Britain. I think I had a series of back-to-back meetings in London. And a Lebanese chauffeur, a person of Lebanese origin, Salim, used to drive me around. And I had lots of meetings in central London where parking place was very difficult. So I was worried about meeting the next appointment. How will I get my car in time and where will he park and all that. He said, sir, don't worry about it. I have a mobile phone. I'll park somewhere convenient. After your meeting is over, just call me from a landline. I'll come in a minute or two. I was filled with both wonder and envy at the same time. Wonder because life has become so much more convenient. A chauffeur has it, and therefore, as a user of that, I am a beneficiary. How comfortable, how stress-free life has become. Envy because in a country where to get a telephone, a landline telephone, was an excruciatingly difficult and prolonged process. When will my country get these things? Well, within the next 10 years or so, or 12 years or so, we did get telephones. We are now 1 billion telephones in the country. Digital technology has now spread far and wide. India is now a model for the world in terms of digital transfers of money and digital welfare system. Television, I remember the first television program that I watched in 1982 in India. Asiad finals were going on. India-Pakistan hockey final tournament was there, so we all wanted to watch it. All of us officials from Vizag, about 7-8 officials, they came down to my place, Narsipatnam. We had lunch there, and from there too, we went to Kakinada. Why Kakinada? In the then Andhra Pradesh, only Hyderabad had TV. Kakinada had TV because the MP from Kakinada was the minister in charge of electronics, Mr. Sanjeeva Rao. Of course, by the time we reached Kakinada, India lost 7-0. It was one of the most disappointing matches. But today, electricity, even 10-15 years ago, electricity was a rare luxury outside a big city. 24-hour power was not available anywhere except in Gujarat. But now, most parts of India, Telangana is a great example, we have electricity practically everywhere, most of the time, occasional slippages maybe. So telephone, television, electricity, digital technology, remarkable strides. And ordinary people's lives have become extremely more very productive, no question about it. When I see in the KBR Park at the morning walks, the hawkers getting payment through UPI. My wife was telling me one person was buying one banana and made the transfer of that 5 rupees or whatever. Somebody told me even more amusing thing. At the Panjagutta Chaurasta, there was a beggar seeking alms. And usually when we want to avoid, you say there's no change, right? Promptly, the beggar produced a QR code and said you can transfer money. Real story. Real story. So, we don't have abject poverty any longer. But it's not enough for us to be satisfied. Abject poverty is defined as only 2,500 calories consumption per day. And in a warm country where the weather gods are very kind, unlike say right now you go to Europe or America, you'll die if you don't have proper housing and heating. In India that's not a problem at all. So life is much more easy in many ways. But we need much more. That's the context in which we're talking. So why bother about, I'm sorry. So why bother about inequality? Is it important? Let me make a broader proposition. The traditional socialists believed there must be equality in every sense. It's an absurd notion which has spectacularly failed. You have seen the collapse of the Soviet Union, the fall of Berlin Wall. When we were youngsters in colleges, the debates, the discussions were socialism versus market economy, or Gandhiism, and all kinds of things. I think by now we realize the notion that everybody will have equal income, no matter what, is a very silly idea which ultimately diminish productivity, distort the incentives, and destroy societies. If you notice, the societies that lived longer in that kind of a regime are finding it harder to come out of that mess. Take Eastern Europe, countries like Poland, etc. After they have come out of the Soviet hegemony, after 1991, there's been significant dynamism in their economies. But Soviet Union itself, erstwhile Soviet Union or Russian Federation now, despite all the technological and educational advantages and resource advantages, they're finding it harder because 70 plus years of socialist mindset, which destroyed the individual initiative, an idea of competition, innovation, and choice, has made it very difficult for the people to come out of that rut. So socialism and its inequality is simply not possible, perhaps not even desirable, because even in a family, even if you give identical opportunities to brothers and sisters, even if you share whatever the parents have equally, and that's what happens typically in India, you see a remarkable difference over a lifetime, depending on your aptitude, your talent, the passion you have, the hard work you put in, and sometimes perhaps even the opportunity and the fortune. If that is the case, to envisage a world where everybody will be economically equal is not a very realistic one. We require definitely economic freedom, competition and choice. That's what essentially market economy is, provided you handle it properly, and the state system which works well for everybody. I think the bargain that we have is in a market economy of economic freedom and enterprise, the tide rises. The bottom will be always much better than what it would be otherwise. Everybody will have a decent quality of life, but there will be definite inequalities. And inequalities perhaps even rise. So I'm not worried too much about inequalities rising. I don't agree with people like Thomas Piketty and others who talk about, the inequalities, my God, the world is collapsing. The evidence does not point to that. But what is problematic is, if the bulk of the people are not able to fulfill their potential and therefore are not able to play a meaningful part in the productive activities of the country, in the economic activities of the country, then we have a crisis. We have a crisis which is political, which is economic, which is social. I want you all to reflect on this. Now, let's take politics. Not party politics, but larger political trajectories. Take the Telangana Assembly election. It was not an accident that in 24 assembly constituencies in and around Hyderabad city, Congress lost every single seat. And in the rest of the state, Congress won predominantly. What's the difference? Where growth touched the bulk of the people, people felt a sense of hope that their future would be better. Irrespective of their own caste, creed, other things, they were voting for a pro-growth orientation. Because growth demands a short-term sacrifice for the long-term good. What our parents do, what our families do, Hindu, Muslim, upper caste, lower caste, Andhra, Telangana, all our families are examples. Just look at your own families 30, 40 years ago, whatever be the circumstances, there is not one family which can say we're not better off today than we were 30, 40 years ago. Because our parents are sacrificing, you as parents are sacrificing, you are saving money, and you are indulging in short-term pain if necessary to protect the long-term gain for our children. But if there is no hope for the bulk of the people, as the rest of Telangana outside of Hyderabad demonstrated, they will vote for short-term gain because they don't see the long-term. If you don't understand it, forget the morality of it, just understand the politics of it and the economics of it. We have to create an opportunity for everybody. You may say, how does it matter? We are growing. Probably even if we do some terrible things or foolish things, we'll grow at 4 or 5%. 4-5% is not a small amount of growth, but it's not enough. For the young people here, does anybody have an idea of what was the growth rate during Industrial Revolution? Anybody just shout? What percentage? Give a number. Make a guess. There's no test here. The growth rate during Industrial Revolution, that period was 1760 to 1840. Historians say that 80-year period was roughly the Industrial Revolution in Britain. So what was the economic growth rate then? Anybody? Young people. Make a guess. Participate. Don't slip off. 32%. Anybody else? 10 to 12%. 50%. The economy in Britain grew at that time by 1 to 2% per annum. It was a revolution because for 10,000 years in an agrarian economy, there was no growth. Because in agriculture, whether gods are kind, you have good production, you have enough to eat. Whether gods are unkind, you starve to death. There was only some fluctuation, but there's no long-term growth. In that backdrop, for the first time in human history, irrespective of the elements of weather, we could record sustained growth rates over a long-term period. If today we have 5% or 4% growth rate, we'll bring down the governments. We'll give them quite rightly galis. But 1 to 2% was still a revolution at that time. So sustained long-term growth, some countries achieved even more. South Korea for some period, China for some period, Taiwan for some period, even Japan for some period, they achieved 8 to 10%. Now you may say, what's wrong, 5% is still good. Let me give you some numbers. Let's assume India grows at 5%, that's about the lowest growth we can manage for the next 20 years, short of war or pandemics. Versus, let's assume 8% growth rate. In about 9 years' time, the difference between 5% growth rate and 8% growth rate in the country is an annual production of $1.8 trillion. That is more than 150 or 160 trillion rupees. That is 150 lakh crores per annum. That means a per capita income loss, of 1 lakh rupees per year. Straightforward. We have to choose. You want a 5% growth rate or 8% growth rate? If you want to forego 1 lakh rupees per capita income and continuously wallow in self-pity, it's our choice as a country. But the difference is 1 lakh rupees per capita. Every person, man, woman, child. That also means a loss of 30 lakh crores income to the governments, because today our governments are collecting about 19-20% of our total production, GDP, as the taxes, tax GDP ratio as they call it. So 30 lakh crores loss, which could have been utilized for infrastructure, welfare, investment for the future. So growth versus no growth, or high growth versus low growth. High growth leads you to a virtuous cycle, a continuous improvement of quality of life and further growth and prosperity. Moderate or low growth, a vicious cycle. More expenditure, more demands, less resources, fewer resources, and therefore you get into a negative cycle. Please understand this. Not only is it politically problematic, it is socially unrealistic. Because 40, 50 years ago, when there was no television, no exposure to what's happening in the rest of the world, people accepted their lot as fate, kismat. Today, from films and TV and social media, they know what is possible. They know it's beyond their reach. People will not be quiet. We are a remarkably lucky society. Despite all the problems, we are one of the most peaceful societies on earth. We are all sitting here discussing in a very civilized manner. We don't realistically expect a group of gundas to come in with the lathis and guns and knives and attack us or something. We're not worried at all. After this meeting is over, we all assume that we'll go back safely. There's no real problem. Our society is still very strong because our family values are strong, irrespective of religion. Our sense of right and wrong is strong. Our collective approval or disapproval of conduct is very strong. That is what is holding us together, not law, not the policemen, not the courts. But this will not last forever. Already you can see certain breakdown. As urbanization takes place inevitably, because in modern world, urbanization, modernization, prosperity, they go together. I grew up in a village. But to have a romantic notion of a village is not really useful. We have to create a framework in which everybody has a better life. But with urbanization, what happens? Lives become impersonal. Very many of us who live in apartments, we don't even know our neighbor they are. With lives becoming impersonal, social controls become weak. So our behavior is no longer regulated by what society thinks of us. We don't care. So you can no longer control human behavior by social controls in the absence of state controls, because we have a very weak state structure, ineffective state structure. So it will lead to chaos, violence, mayhem. Even now, we're increasingly afraid if a girl goes out into the city, if she doesn't come back, let's say before 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the night, we're very worried, right? You make so many phone calls and you say, please don't get into any vehicle as you please. I'll come and pick you up if necessary, and we take all precautions. It's going to get worse. So we need it. We need to create an opportunity for everybody. And our society has certain, I'm a great supporter of Indian society. I'm very proud of our society and culture. I'm a great optimist, one of the greatest optimists in this country. But this optimism is not an unvarnished one, not an uncritical one. If you don't look at the reality, you're simply optimistic. It's not optimism, it's romanticism. You must look at the reality, look at the possibilities, be optimistic, and make the reality change for the better. One of the negatives of our society, where there are so many positives, is our moral neutrality to inequality by birth. We somehow think it's normal, it's natural, that's the way God created. We are kind to people, we make sure that they have good food or clothing, but it never occurs to us that the servant's maid's child, who is as bright as my child, probably deserves a good education to fulfill her potential. It's not, somehow, we don't even think about it as a part of our culture. That's one of our great weaknesses as a society. But that cannot continue. We have to harness human potential. And you cannot get high growth rates if only 10-20% fulfill their potential. The rest simply will not be able to participate in the market activities, in productive activities meaningfully, and therefore growth will always be stunted. So we have to look at inequalities. Not for perfect equality, but a reasonable equality of opportunity to give them skills and employment and decent incomes, and a confidence that if they work hard, if they have skills, if they contribute to society, A, they can contribute to society, B, they will be rewarded. And C, in a generation's time, the poor can become middle class can become rich. Its poverty in itself is not a problem. Hopelessness is the real problem. Nobody who came from poverty ever complained about poverty. In fact, they take pride that I am a self-made person. I worked hard. And this society gave me so much of opportunity. I made something of myself. But if that making something of yourself is not possible, that is a tragedy. So that's the context in which I'm speaking. So what do we do? Before I go into specifics, I'll very briefly outline the few things, tangible things we need to do and why. But before that, let me mention 3 numbers. I want every young person, I want every serious Indian to look at these 3 numbers and understand what it means, because any one number is unique, is quite extraordinary. India is exceptional in having all these 3 numbers. No other country has these 3 numbers. Number 1, 90% plus workers in India are in the unorganized sector without a monthly secure wage. Just imagine. You don't know where the next month's income is going to come. There's no security. You're always on the margins of survival. 90% unorganized sector. No country, no significant country in the world has this. Maybe Afghanistan, but that's not the comparison, right? Take G20, or take G40 if you like, take G50 if you like. None of them have this number. 90%. Actually, some economists say 93%. But let's round it off to 85, 90%. That number itself should keep us awake at nights. The second number, 65% of our people are still rural. We are saying that we are urbanizing. No, our urbanization is one of the slowest in the world. Ours is the lowest urbanization in all G20 countries, maybe G40, G50 countries. In a world where urbanization, modernization, and prosperity and economic growth go together, low urbanization means we are condemning ourselves to low levels of income. No country is anywhere near that. 65% rural. And even the urbanization that is going on is big city urbanization as opposed to in situ urbanization. I'll come to it later. The third number, even now 46% of our families, 46% of the people depend on agriculture as a primary source of livelihood. It used to be 41% until 2021 or so, 2019 or so. Post-COVID, it now became actually 46. The other day, when I had a long discussion with the Finance Commission, I pointed out this number 41. Then Dr. Panagaria said, Jayaprakash, now it's 46%. It has actually grown, this number. 46%. Rest of the world is at 20, countries like China, 3% United States and Britain, or much of Europe. Some other countries 8-9%, but nobody has 46%. And remember, agriculture share of GDP is only about 17-16%, and it's falling every year. Just understand the implications of these three numbers: 90% unorganized sector, 65% still rural, 46% dependent on agriculture as the primary source of livelihood. Always remember that when you look at India, when you think of India, remember these three numbers. And until that is altered, our pretense that we are changing India is not really borne by evidence. It's largely a pretense. So what do we do? 5 very simple, straightforward points. Maybe a 6th addendum. Very quickly, each one I'll take you through a couple of minutes. Later in the discussion, we can go into detail. Each one requires a detail. You can have a whole workshop for 3 days only on one of these items. So I will compress everything into 10 minutes so that we have time for interaction. The first is, if the government finances are not in a sound condition, we are going to create a disaster for ourselves. And many governments, what are they doing? Instead of protecting the future, which is what every family does, which is what made humanity what it is today, they are devouring the future. We are destroying our children's future. If you borrow recklessly for current expenditure without creating an asset for the future, without enhancing the income earning capacity of our children, that family is ruined, right? That's what exactly most of our governments are doing most of the time. We're in a desperate situation. Some states are terrible. Some states are doing better. We have to fix this. There are states where the minimum expenditure over which they have no control. They cannot, no chief minister, no party can change it. Your salaries, your pensions, interest payments, you have zero flexibility, inflexible expenditure. There are states where these three are exceeding the state's total own revenues. If 100 rupees is the revenue, some states is going to 120, 130 rupees. These three, I'm not talking of welfare, I'm not talking administrative expenditure, transport, nothing. Just these three.
For us to have an idea, please specific on the states, sir.
The worst states right now are Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh is the worst. Last 5 years, it made havoc with the AP economy. Even otherwise, they have some problems, but it was destructive completely. Punjab, terrible state. Himachal Pradesh, But Himachal is a special category state, small state, therefore probably we can overcome that without too much difficulty. To a large extent, the state of Rajasthan, to some extent, not as bad, West Bengal and Kerala.
Fortunate Telangana is not included.
The reason is a good question. The reason is not because we are great people. This is the only state, a small state relatively, with a large city. So a state with a large city, particularly a small state with a large city, has a unique advantage. We are doing our best to undermine the economy of the state, but we have not destroyed Hyderabad. Successive parties, successive governments, combined Andhra Pradesh and post-Telangana formation, there are many things wrong, but they at least protected Hyderabad city's productive capacity. But Telangana is working very hard to undermine itself. When the state was formed, we had the largest surplus in the country. The revenues versus the expenditure that you have to incur, which is the revenue expenditure as we call it. We had 1,16,000 crore surplus was estimated in a period of 5 years by the 14th Finance Commission. Today, we have 30 to 40,000 crore deficit per annum. But we can still survive, not comfortably, not very well, thanks to Hyderabad. Another state which is doing like Telangana, which has tremendous opportunity but is working very hard to undermine itself, is Tamil Nadu. Chennai city, cash cow, because cities generally give enormous revenues to the coffers and they produce economic growth, jobs and so on and so forth. The states which are utilizing the advantage so far, but now that some of them are slipping, Karnataka. Relatively more robust financial management, but now with too many guarantees, for the first time they're getting into some difficulty, but they're better off still. Maharashtra is doing very well in general. And the states which are doing surprisingly well are 3 right now. Uttar Pradesh, 78,000 crore revenue surplus. Total revenues versus total revenue expenditure, not capital expenditure, not investment, there is 78,000 crore surplus. So that plus borrowings will go towards investment for the future, provided you invest wisely, not like your Kaleshwaram project or something. The other state which was always backward, known to be backward, Orissa, 38,000 crore annual revenue surplus. Gujarat always has been very prudent state because Gujarati society is very prudent. They are thrifty, they don't waste too much money on stupid things. The Gujaratis have a very special culture, some positives. So Gujarat always has been a very healthy state. These 3, particularly Gujarat and Orissa, where UP is doing very well, but there are larger problems. It's a poor state with problems. Gujarat and Orissa are doing well. So these are the good states. States that could be in good shape but are working hard to not be so good are Telangana and Tamil Nadu. States which are bad I gave you, others are somewhere in between. But the broader point I'm making is, you see the last 4 or 5 assembly elections in the country. Telangana, Karnataka, you had Haryana, Maharashtra. What were the dominant themes in these elections? So I'm not opposed to welfare. Welfare is necessary. There is no way you can carry people with you. There's no way you can give minimum sense of dignity in abject poverty without some degree of welfare. But if welfare becomes a philosophy, it's all welfare and nothing else, then it's a disaster. So let's have some basic rules. 1, you do whatever you like with the resources that you have, but you cannot borrow for the current expenditure. You figure out how you manage it. Borrowed money must go towards building assets. If you are smart, you must have actually some surplus, as we all save money, and then build the future. But anyway, that may be difficult, all right, but at least you cannot use borrowed money for today's expenditure. It's possible. There are other things, technical stuff. The constitution makers were very wise. they made a provision for all those things. There is Article 293, by which the state's finances have to be managed or have to be directed by the union government, because as the Constituent Assembly argued, there is only one country in terms of financial stability and the credit of India. Telangana or Andhra Pradesh cannot go bankrupt in isolation. India will go bankrupt. That's the way our structure is designed. Therefore, they gave the responsibility to the federal government in India, the union government. But we are, and though it's not germane to what I'm discussing here, we keep hearing every other day some critiques saying Government of India is not giving money. I want to give you numbers, actual hard numbers. This year or next year, 25-26 budget, out of the total revenues, tax and non-tax revenues put together of Government of India, 54.6% is going to states. The current year, roughly the same thing. 54.6%. Conveniently, political parties and sometimes states are taking a number here, a number there without looking at the totality. Resources go to states in many ways. One is the Finance Commission, devolution, about 41% or 42% of the total divisible pool of the union government. The second is the Finance Commission grants, which are beyond this, local government and some other grants. The third is what are called centrally sponsored schemes. There's a huge chunk goes in the form of centrally sponsored schemes. The fourth is certain statutory programs like Employment Guarantee Act. The fifth is what recently has been started 2 years ago. A significant money given practically as free money, but as a 50-year zero interest loan. Anybody gives me 100 crores for 50 years to be repaid, zero interest, we'll embrace it, right? Practically it's free money. So if you take these are all transfers to states. 25.6 lakh crores is transferred to states this year. That constitutes 54.6% of the total revenues of Government of India, tax and non-tax. So somehow the political arguments we make, very silly arguments, they are silly. They are devoid of facts. I want you to understand. We can go deeper, but there's no time. So first is fiscal prudence, without which the poor are the ones who are going to hurt most. Because if government fails, we all go to our gated communities and villas and all that. Nandan's wife, my friend Rohini, she made a very beautiful comment. She said, the rich of India are seceding from the country. They create their own islands and they're unbothered, unaffected by what happens to the rest of the people because of governance failure. Now, that's okay for some time, but ultimately, we are a part of this country. We cannot isolate ourselves from the rot that is setting into the country because of government's failure in infrastructure, in regulation, in rule of law, in 100 other things. The second thing that we need to do, zero cost, not a rupee. I'm a very thrifty guy. I don't believe in saying, give me 10 lakh crores, 1 lakh crores. No. Assume that money is in short supply or there's no money available. Education. School education. Many of our pundits say we have to spend 6% GDP on school education, on education. With due respect, they're talking without any understanding of the issue. I would not like to say anything harsher. United States spends about 3.8% of GDP on school education. But United States educates 92% of all the kids in the country in government schools. And they give a reasonable quality education, not good enough for America, but definitely they're way, way, way above us. Britain spends 3.3% of GDP on school education. 95% of the kids are in government schools. We spend 3.6% of GDP on school education. 60% of the children are in government schools. And the outcomes are appallingly bad, one of the worst in the world. So education, particularly school education, because that is the key. Without good quality school education and the skills, how can there be productive workers? We can do it easily without spending 1 rupee extra. Andhra Pradesh is spending 1,15,000 rupees per child going to government school per year. 1,15,000 rupees. If you are not aware, we think that government schools, where is the money, bichare, no, it's not true. Telangana is spending about 90,000 rupees per child. AP spends more because they have something called Amma Odi, etc. Other states spend, Maharashtra spends about 1,00,000 rupees per child, other states 80, 90,000, some states 60,000 depending on the per capita income, etc. These are not small sums. The teacher-student ratios are extremely good. Our secondary schools have 18 kids, 1 teacher, average. Government schools I'm talking about. 16 kids, 1 teacher. And there are, in India, 13,000 schools with teachers. There are 39,000 teachers without a single student. True numbers. When I raised this issue in the assembly in the Andhra Pradesh state in 2009 or 2010, it was much worse. And the whole assembly, despite the Telangana agitation and disruption, it was shocked. For 4.5 hours we debated that. So money is not the issue in education, particularly school education. It's the quality, utilizing resources better and quality. Many of us grew up in villages. As I told you, I went to a village school, Telugu medium. Because all farmers, including my grandfather, they spent 25 rupees per acre in those days. That was equal to 1 or 2 bags of paddy, equal to some 5,000 rupees today. They all spent that money to build the school because their children, their grandchildren are going to benefit from that. The society cared. We got excellent education despite abject poverty in the country at that time. Tens of thousands of them flourished in the country and abroad. Today, we are spending so much more money. In those days, probably per child expenditure of the school was of the order of 100 rupees or 200 rupees. Today, we are spending so much more money. As I told you, 1,50,000. When I go back to the same school, there is not a child in the school who has a future. Their future is sealed by circumstances of birth, because they go to that school, they're born in that village. They born to those parents. And without skills and minimal education at school level, how can they be partners in economic growth in the country? How can they come out of poverty except through mendicants? How will that solve the problems of the country? You may want to know whether it's really that bad. Let me give you a couple of numbers. There's so much literature on that. Everything I mentioned, if I utter a sentence or talk about a number, you assume there is at least 100 hours of study on that. Everything is based on solid, incontrovertible evidence and hopefully impeccable logic. At the age of 16, in Telangana for instance, 50% of kids cannot look at a watch and read time. Right now, my watch shows 12:35, 36 hours. About 75% are able to say about 12 o'clock. Only 50% are able to say it's 12:35 hours. At the age of 16, they must have finished school. Under 50% are able to count the number of hours you slept. For instance, you slept at 9 o'clock, you woke up at 5 o'clock, how many hours have you slept? Only 50% of the 16-year-olds in 2025 are able to answer that. Now tell me, how you are going to utilize them for economic growth in this country or wealth creation? If you ask them a question about discount, you are buying something at 10,000 rupees, they gave a discount at 10%. Therefore, how much is the discount? Only under 50% can answer that at the age of 16 or 17 or 18. In a global survey called PISA, Program for, anybody heard of PISA? There's a survey called Program for International Students Assessment. The rich countries, OECD countries, started that to compare their children's academic performance at the age of 15, roughly 9th and 10th grade. They measure this sensibly. Unlike our measurements, in India, take Telangana, typically 96% people pass. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister. And finally they came to an understanding. Right now that's the pattern. In the IAS examination, India's premier civil service examination, we think logic and decision making and aptitude are not important at all.
Hindi and non-Hindi.
So, economist in a very expressive passage said, but not to improve educational standards, but to reduce recruitment service. This is the low-hanging fruit. If you simply have PISA, I forgot to mention, PISA, 74 countries participated. What would India's rank be? They measure sensible outcomes, comprehension and communication, understanding the concepts and application of the conceptual understanding for real problem solving, and logic to come to reasonable conclusions. This is what they test. Where do you think India would be ranked out of? Not the expectation will be somewhere 15, 10, 20, 25. No. Indra Louis is there, Satya Nadella is there from Hyderabad, we have Sundar Pichai is there. No, our kids are doing very well abroad and so on and so forth. And we are a very intelligent society, hardworking society, we value education. We were ranked 73rd out of 74 countries. Luckily there was a country called Kyrgyzstan in that list.
That saved us.
Will figure out what needs to be done. Why are our kids not getting the best? And try and improve the system. You know what the government has done? I was shocked. I always thought that I almost play like chess. I anticipate certain moves. I want the outcome for the country. Therefore, I make my moves and I know how to. They respond in a certain way. I know how to respond. But this particular response of the government shocked me. The government said, henceforth India will not participate in PISA survey. Real story. 2009, The survey was conducted in which India was participant. 16 years since then, we buried our head in sand. This does not do well. We can easily set it right because our kids are intelligent, they work very hard. Our parents sacrifice enormously. The poorest parents, rickshaw pullers, vegetable vendors, they're willing to spend disproportionate sums to give their children an opportunity, a head start. Our government is spending a lot of money contrary to public perception. Our society values education. When somebody gets selected, when you said, no, some silly examination, I got through and I got a rank, you all applauded, you thought it was a great achievement. I was feeling embarrassed. We have so much of adulation, educational success we revere in this country. Across all castes, regions, religions, languages. It's a very common for all of us in this country. Angatlo anne unnai. Allu notlo senu unnadu. We have all the factors which are right, except that the fellows whose duty it is to impart education don't know a thing about it. They pretend. When the demand side is very strong, all you need to do is create the right kind of incentives by creating the right kind of goal. If the examination you can score very highly by copying and by mugging up, we do copying, we mug up. If you can do well only if you understand and if you apply the knowledge, we'll also figure out somehow. The market, the parents, the schools, the administrators, the whole system will somehow figure out. By merely changing the examination system, making it sensible, stress-free, not based on why is there so much of stress, you have to mug up. Memory. Again, there's no time to go into detail. I'm just going to give a glimpse of it. So education. Third is healthcare. Healthcare, we are the lowest spender in all civilized world from the government. We spend 1.1, 1.2% of GDP from the government. Britain spends about 10%. Almost every rich Western country spends about 9 to 10%, including United States. Only Singapore spends about 3.5% GDP from the government, but gives the world's best healthcare. Private sector, the people spend another 3.2%. Indian government spends only 1.1, 1.2% of GDP. That government mostly is state expenditure. When I say Indian, not union government, but governments in India. Union government's share in that is only 30%, 70% is by the states. We can't spend too much money. We don't have too much money. If you spend just about 0.5 to 0.6% GDP extra, that too not overnight, over 2-3 years you stagger it. 1 year, 1 lakh crores we gave tax exemptions. Without thinking, right? This recent budget. I'm saying 1 lakh crores over a period of 3 years, add 30,000 crores every year. Over 3 years' time, we make it 1 lakh crores extra, but do it wisely. There's a way of doing it with primary care. Again, there's no time to go into details. Each of these issues, I've been working for years with intense depth and fighting very hard. So none of it is casual observation. Everything is backed by evidence and logic and global practices. You can radically improve the outcomes in healthcare. Right now, just to give an idea of the link between healthcare and poverty and inequality. 5.5 crore Indians, 55 million Indians, are descending into poverty every year because of healthcare failure. Just imagine, 5.5 crore people descending into poverty. That means on the 1st of January, they were not poor by our standards, by our measurement. But within the year, they descend into poverty because of inadequate access to healthcare. Either because they're not able to earn, because of lost time and wages, or they're forced to borrow for the health expenditure. So either way, they're becoming poor. 5.5 crores, almost the population of Britain or France, every year. Every year. The largest cause of indebtedness in India for the poor is healthcare challenges. There's a measure called physical disability adjusted life years. That means how many years have you lost on account of ill health? For every 1 lakh population, we are losing 49,000 years. That means almost half the productive life of human beings in this country is lost because of ill health. About 15,000-20,000 cannot be reduced because age, no? After a certain age, you cannot. So you don't take it 49 as a bad thing. 15, you assume that's the minimum. But you can easily reduce it by another 30,000-35,000 years. That means 1/3 of the life can be made productive. 1/3. Productivity is equal to prosperity. So healthcare, low-hanging fruit. Education, zero cost. Fiscal management, zero cost. You only have to improve the way you manage things. Healthcare, a bit. I'm arguing for about 0.5% of GDP. Slowly increasing, you can't do it overnight, and doing it wisely. The fourth issue, I talked about rural-urban issues. Distant migration to big cities of the poor people with low skills and low wages is a disaster. It's an unmitigated disaster. Just remember COVID time, what happened? When more than 4 or 5 or 6, some people say 6 crore people had to go back to the villages, the pain and the suffering they endured, it's seared in our memory. What happens to a low-income, low-wage person coming from a distant village to a big city? There's no housing. In a ramshackle place, several people share in insanitary conditions. Somehow they survive. Because we are a warm country, it doesn't kill you, but terrible lives. You have to commute 15-20 kilometers each way to work. One day you have no work, you starve. One day you fall sick, it's a catastrophe. We are forcing them to migrate to distant big cities because there are no economic opportunities locally. All you need to do is allow small towns to grow. You don't have to spend much money from the government. All you need is town planning and transport. Just these two things. Because of the advantages that are now available as opposed to 30-40 years ago, television, electricity, digital technology, mobile phone, many of these jobs can be local. Let me give you a few examples. There's a place called Achyutapuram in the erstwhile Vizag district, very close to Anakapalli. A company called Brandix, a Sri Lankan garment factory. They established there. 22,000 women are employed there. Every person within a radius of 40-50 kilometers, there's not a woman in those villages. If she wants to work, there's not a woman who is unemployed there. There's a place called Sulurpet, a company called Apache, a Taiwanese company. 15,000 people in leather garments, leather goods, they're employing. A company called Doctors in a village called Kavuru, a small village, it's not even a small town. They established a medical transcription related company in that village. First they did it as altruism, our village, let's do something. They employed 200 people. Now they're expanding it by another 500 workers because they find it more profitable than in Hyderabad. The costs are lower, productivity is higher, profits are greater. Our imagination must not be merely Hyderabad. Hyderabad should grow. Chennai should grow. We are proud of our cities. But there must be also in situ urbanization. Within 10-15 kilometers, if you simply have town planning, public transport available, proper roads. You know what the complaints of these companies are? The other day my team went to Sulurpet to find out what's happening. There are 3 complaints they made, 3 requests they made. One, the roads, we are sending buses to ferry workers every day. The roads are bad, can you improve? Is that too much to ask of a government? Giving 15,000 people employment and paying taxes? 2, we want to give health care to these workers. We will build our own hospital. We require a bit of space. Just give us 2-3 acres of land. 3, because so many people are now working, there are some other vagabonds and drunkards, they're creating problems. Can there be a police station, at least a police outpost? What are the big things here? This is real case. Sulurpet, that's why I'm giving you examples, names and examples. You can verify. So there is so much that can happen in this country. You cannot always look at the big things. They are necessary. AI is necessary. Blockchain technology is necessary. I don't understand what it means, but it doesn't matter. All these are necessary. I'm all in favor. But remember, all of software in India employs only how many people? Anybody has an idea? The total computer industry in India, I am the architect of the high-tech city, so I'm all in favor of it. But that's not the only solution. Anybody has an idea how many people are employed in the computer sector in India? Total in India is 5.6 million, 56 lakhs. They constitute 1% of the total workforce of India. You do that, you expand it, make it bigger, I'm all for you. But the real challenge is the balance 50 crore people. Giving them an opportunity, giving them a decent wage. A 15,000-20,000 wage in a small town is equal to 40,000 in Hyderabad. And more dignity, and their khandan is there, their friends are there, their network is there. Small town development. You don't have to spend much money. Once you do minimal things required, the transport infrastructure and town planning, private sector will come in, sites, services, schools, colleges, hospitals, everything will come automatically from private sector. Finally, we must look at employment generation and skill promotion as the central challenges of India. Employment means investment. If you treat every investor like dirt, potentially is a sinner, is a bad fellow. That is our assumption in this country with the old pseudo-socialist notions. If you insult them, then you will not get productivity, you will not get employment, you will not come out of poverty, you will not create equality of opportunity. Our labor laws, now look at, I'll give one example and conclude with this. I've already overshot my time very considerably, my apologies for that. China is 5 times our GDP. Their per capita income also is 5 times because population is roughly equal. They are now at $19 trillion, at least 4.5 times our GDP, 4.5 times our GDP. $19 trillion, we are at about $4 trillion, give or take, dollar appreciation, etc. And China is at a much higher level of value chain. We all understand that. But at the low level, garment industry, to take as an example, they produce as much cotton as we do. There's more poverty in India. There are more willing hands here. China manufactures and exports $325 billion worth of garments, giving tens of millions of people employment, 325 billion. The total export of India is 36 billion garments. Where is 325? Where is 36? When we are poorer, when we need more employment at the low level with some decent wage, why are you not allowing it? Because of your land policies, your labor policies. You have terrible labor policies which are anti-labor, anti-employment in the name of protecting the labor. So just reimagine and bring linkages between agriculture and industry as far as practicable at the local level. The broader point I'm making is, A, we desperately need to create conditions for the bulk of the poor in India to have a better life. But through the sweat of their brow, through hard work, through skills, through opportunity, through enhanced incomes and dignity. And B, it's eminently feasible. You don't have to spend money. You just have to have common sense vision and do a few right things. If building a minimal infrastructure is a big issue, big ask, then the governments have no rationale to exist. And all of us with voice, the OGA, the enlightened citizens of India, the more fortunate people in India who understand the right and wrong, we need to collectively raise voice beyond parties. I don't care which party, it doesn't matter. Let me conclude with this. One day, several times, not once, on several occasions I told a very prominent leader, one of the most prominent leaders, the other party leader will never become president of your party. 95% of the rest are interchangeable. So what is the big thing we're talking about? All this market segmentation and then this publicity is all tamasha. Let's bury the hatchet. Parties are not that important. They're incredibly important in political management. But in terms of ideas, it's all a lie. There's nothing much to distinguish them. It's the same people, right? You all know. They're your friends. Oftentimes when I meet some politicians, I don't normally pay attention to what's happening on a daily basis. Though I live here, I completely disconnect myself from the daily. I don't watch television, I don't read newspapers except to do Sudoku and other puzzles, etc. I am unaware. So occasionally when I encounter an airport or something, a prominent politician, I honestly asked them, which party do you belong to now? And very shamefacedly they tell me, sir, now I'm in so-and-so party, which I could not have imagined 5 or 10 years ago because they were completely opposed to that party or leadership. So, parties are irrelevant. We have to shape up. We have a priceless opportunity, which only modernity gives. And I hope that we will look at evidence and logic and the best practices and make the best of the opportunities available and transform our country the way we deserve and the way we need to. I wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jayaprakash Garu. It was surprising to me that in the beginning itself, he did a 100% negation of what I said. He said, there is no income disparity. I mean, I was surprised. But then later, for all the 1 hour, I could say, I mean, if you don't believe, it's fine. 105 rank in 125 countries. So, I mean, either somebody may say some national awards, I don't believe all that. It's okay. But 105 in the hunger index. So maybe that's the reason we are getting 81 crore people are getting it. And disparity does exist everywhere. In America also is there, every country is there. So, for example, India, 1% population has 40% wealth. But what I'm telling is that, sir, last point is, that's what we are, OGA and exhibition is working on. That is how to create people with skills, etc. And that's why rightly the present government and our Sridhar Babu Garu, with the president of exhibition also involved in Skill University. So we are into that particular thing, that particular thing. And also another thing in support of the selection of this topic is, it is irrefutable that unemployment is slightly increasing, 5.6% to 7% to, they say 8%. But whether it's true or not, I don't know, but 8% is the unemployment level. And very beautiful point you said about what's the difference in 5% growth rate and 8% growth rate, so much of thing is there. So what, I mean, whether we are not politicians or anything, what part we can play for the OGA colleges and exhibition society colleges is that try to reorient the courses or the training such that the people coming out are required for the society. And so lastly, I wanted to have your think also, why do you always work on something theoretical? The biggest problem today in Hyderabad is traffic, and we don't work on traffic. We have no university works on traffic. Traffic problem is the, but sir, on a positive note, thank you very much. We really enjoyed thoroughly. I could see that normally everybody was pleased to see. And then one thing I would like to tell all the people present here, whatever he said one important point. Every point he made is backed by scores of hours of research. That's a great thing, a great request there. And then whatever he said, it's sir, one thing, the entire proceedings has been live streamed on the internet. I've already sent to all of you. And we have the entire, sir, the text thing are there. We will state government. No, I think, sir. The next part of the program is, before you come up, questions. Questions, yes. Babu, Akadiyan. So, in the beginning, sir said that he wanted to talk only 35-40 minutes, and then with interaction, he said, repeatedly he said, whenever we meet, he said, I want interaction. So, we are going to have, go ahead, Babu.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question, sir. Before the speech, I was very happy. Now, very sad now.
Why?
No, that's not my
The figures.
I'm a great optimist. But as I said before, ignoring the facts and being optimistic is not optimism, it's romanticism.
You said, sir.
Look at the facts, look at the solutions, and see what best we can do to implement them. And I truly believe none of the things I said is very original or spectacular. They are commonsensical, universally practiced in societies where they flourished. If we're not willing to do that, then we're unfit to call ourselves a civilized nation. Let me be blunt. So this is not a cry of despair. It is a call for action.
Yeah, sir. You described yourself as an optimist. But my question, I'm afraid, will probably brand me as a skeptic. That's not the fact, sir. So in the entire process of what we are trying to have a macro scenario of, we have not fine-tuned on the debate, but no broader aspects. I have a feeling that we are probably not considering the Malthusian aspect of the. We have added one Japan, we have added one Australia, and we have added one Great Britain, population-wise. So there are 3 nations which are on us now. And this probably compounds the growth. So we have a tunnel vision, or do we have a tunnel vision when only talk about GDP and the voluminous, humongous growth that is happening? How do we address this? I'm not talking about the demographic aspects again, sir.
I get it. You know, way back in 1974 or so, I wrote an essay. I used to have nightmares about Indian population explosion. I wrote an essay almost arguing that you must do something scientifically so that if you want to have children, there must be an active process by which you beget children. Ordinarily, you must be sterile. I went to that extent as a young person. I was very panicky. But no, this worry about population of India is a worry of 50 years ago. We cracked the problem. We solved the problem. Most states of India today, take Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, most states of India except 2, they have now come below what is called population stabilization level. The fertility rate of 2.1, that means the number of children a woman bears during her reproductive life is called fertility rate. 2.1 is regarded as required for a stable population. Because if a couple begets 2 children, that means they will continue. 2.1 because you expect some mortality. All the states I mentioned are well below that. There are states with 1.6, where is some? 1.6 now. The whole country is now between 1.9 and 2. There are only 2 significant states where they are still a little behind the curve, only behind the curve, but they are moving in the right direction. The fertility rate of Bihar is now about 2.7 or so. Of UP is about 2.4, 2.5. But they are also within a decade, they are coming below the level. And aggregate, India will probably have about 160 crore. Today we are at 145, 144. We'll reach maybe 160, 165 max. After that, slowly we'll stabilize and we'll actually decrease. So the challenge is no longer, my God, population increasing. The challenge is, my God, we're not utilizing them well.
Human capital.
So many countries are now worried about demographic decline. China is worried because every year they're losing 20-30 lakh workers, working age. We have people who are working age, we're not utilizing them. And people like Elon Musk, who is a mad fellow in some respects, he's saying, no, there must be many more people and all that. I hope he'll not win that argument. It's a terrible argument to make. But I don't agree that population is any longer a problem. It's an opportunity. If we make it a crisis, it's our problem.
Very good afternoon.
After this, I want a few youngsters to raise their hands. Please.
I am Dr. Vamshati Laksa, one of the chairs of the Economic Committee. One of the excellent lectures I have heard today. Very knowledgeable, very clinically analytical, as Aditya Martin said. I wanted to raise one particular issue. Though the topic is disparities about economic and income disparities, but there is another angle to it. Disparities of opportunity. Especially, I thought I was expecting that you would talk also about some upsurging organizations which are trying to work in this direction, like Dallit Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry and WIKI also. because I was involved in this issue. But I think given an opportunity sometime like that, please comment on that.
Mr. Chamber of Commerce, they are doing a remarkable job. I mentioned this several times. In an address of this kind, you can't cover everything. Already I spoke too much. Take a simple case, how you can make a different life. The sanitation workers of Hyderabad, they customize the equipment that is in other countries to suit our roads and our conditions without having to do it manually. When they came up with an app, they registered all the sanitary workers, and whenever there is a problem, they call X to the app, and whoever is nearest will go there and sort it out. The cost has come down dramatically. The complaints have come down dramatically in the city sanitary management. Very proud of what they have done. Delhi is embracing that, many other cities are embracing. This is the kind of thing we require. I didn't use the word opportunity too many times. I don't believe that equality of resources or assets is important. That's why Thomas Piketty, notwithstanding what the Gangadhar said, is wrong. That doesn't make a difference. The quality of life is significantly across the world. Opportunity is the key. The most important elements of opportunity are quality education and skills, because God and nature endowed us with this potential. I often tell people publicly, I don't know if there's a God. My dealing with God is one of mutual non-interference. If God doesn't bother about me, I don't bother about God either. But I believe there is a sin. I believe unfulfilled potential is the greatest sin. If a child endowed by nature or God with that potential, that ability by birth, if we do not harness that potential because we were foolish enough not to give quality education to them and quality healthcare to make them productive, then it is a sin we are committing as humanity. As long as that is there, as long as they can rise, vertical mobility is possible through their hard work and ability. I am not worried about poverty. I am not worried about inequality. If I compare every day with a fellow who has 1,000 crores and want to value in self-pity, it's my problem. I am not worried about that. What I am worried about is, does everybody have decent opportunity? Are basic needs met? Is the society harmonious? Is it a fair society or mind is right? If these four questions are addressed, and if we are free, I am perfectly happy. That's what we can aspire for. Any other aspiration is a meaningless aspiration. They all spectacularly collapsed in human history. So opportunity is critical, and some organizations do, but the issue is, unless you multiply it a million times, our scale is so humongous. Whatever we do, education, I do good. Many of the issues I talked about, I give enormous amount of time and energy to actually make something happen. I see some wonderful people doing wonderful work, but there are still only some symbols of excellence here and there. It's not become a pattern in India. It's not become part of the mainstream discourse. We need that. For instance, education, you raise it, all the so-called economists say 6% GDP must be spent. With due respect, idiots. Where are you getting 6%? This money you're spending, you're getting zero outcome, you want to spend more money of my taxes? What rubbish are you talking? So, unthinking, well-meaning, trash is going on in India. I'm being very harsh. When the time is short, you have to be harsh to penetrate the point. So, please don't worry about the words I'm using. Think about it. Evidence and logic and best practices. Measure it by that. The poverty of the mind is the greatest poverty. Yes.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
I'm Umakant, a member of Economic Committee. My question is that we have spoken about GDP, implementation, a lot of things. But we are nowhere in a position to decide that how much percentage of GDP we are going to spend or do anything. But with the kind of people we are sitting inside this room, I want you to give us a guidance. Like the people who are here have done great things, and they can do better things if they are guided in the right way. So let us come up with a implementation system, top 3 or top 5 kind of things, where we can set an example for the remaining towns or cities in Telangana, so that other states can take example out of us.
Great point. Take, for instance, education. You don't have to do much. We're all fond of spending more money, building more classrooms and all that. There's nothing wrong with that, but that doesn't really solve anything. Adopt a few schools. Simply focus on educational outcomes, real outcomes, not marks, not grades, not ranks, all this stupidity. But is the kid really fulfilling her potential? And there are ways of doing it. If you want, we can discuss in private, because I'm now helping many organizations and encouraging and raising money, putting money into that and improving assessment system. I'm ready to build in Hyderabad city a first-rate science lab for all kids of government schools and low-end private schools, so that at least there is some exposure to science and technology available. Right now we've taken some elaborated, built a first-rate laboratory, a simple laboratory for all the kids of Hyderabad. So there are many things we need to do in education. You all can be partners in that. Healthcare is more advocacy than doing anything concrete, so let me leave at that. But entrepreneurship locally, the small town development, I mentioned to you the companies that are doing it, the doctors company for instance. So expand your imagination, don't think of doing only in Hyderabad. Now, buying an acre of land in Hyderabad for a song and then appreciating 1,000-fold is not progress. I don't mind it. Many of us know, fortunate or unfortunate, we invested, we got, that's okay. But let's not delude ourselves into thinking that's progress. Progress is about wealth creation. Wealth is about creation of goods and services required for human consumption, to meet human needs. If that can be done in Husnabad as well as in Hyderabad, can you think of doing something in Husnabad even as you do some big things in Hyderabad? This is in your hands. Can we push you all influential people politically? Can you put some sense into your political system? All these fellows spending 40-50 crores to become MLAs, I don't know, God knows why they spend. That's an insanity of a different kind. We are not discussing politics or political reform today. But can you make them realize there are simple things we can do at very low cost to transform the lives of people? So each of these items requires our action. Some you can act as individuals, some collectively, some you have to raise voice collectively, lend voice to make it happen. So each of these is actionable point. None of these is theoretical. None of these is theoretical. They're all actionable points. But please widen your horizon, open your minds, and do whatever you can. And anytime anybody is interested in doing any one of these things anywhere, I'm always there as a resource center for that. My team, we will do it, because we have dedicated our lives to that. I have some very fine young people who do research, with great passion. In the market, they probably will get 10x. They work for a song or free, out of love for the country. There are people like that, young people, brilliant people are there, with intelligence, with understanding, with depth and logic, not merely with passion. The combination of passion and the mind that they are required. So please come forward. We are here to make it happen.
Hello sir. It's not a great privilege, but the greatest privilege to have you. And good afternoon to all the
Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes. Myself, Ramawat Anil Nayak, Sardar Patel College, Assistant Professor in Department of Social Sciences. So it will be a great disrespect if I say I have only one question throughout your seminar, because all the themes you have picked up and spoke has a lot of potential, and each word fallen from your seminar can be picked up as a research topic. So I have a couple of questions. So as I told, it will be a great disrespect, but I am moving with one important question. Now what bothers me more is wealth inequality than the income inequality. Now the people are able to manage income, but the wealth inequality is the greatest problem. The 1% of the population or the top 1% are benefiting. So that is one question, sir. And the other question is fragmented education. Now the education society or parents, teachers and every one of us running in the NEET and IIT. So we are, I think, falling in the unidirection way, disrespecting the other areas of the education. So how would we address that?
I didn't get the second question properly.
We are having the education fragmentation, sir. So
you mean the state board?
Thank you.
The first question I already addressed it. I don't believe wealth inequality is a big issue. I know there will be many people arguing, we'll discuss it later on, we'll debate it. But my concern is if everybody has an opportunity to rise, irrespective of the circumstances of birth, has the productivity, can compete with anybody's child, irrespective of whether Ambani's son spends 3,000 crores for this stupid wedding and is an idiot basically. I don't care who he is, but I can compete because I got good education and God gave me brains. I'm quite happy with that. Opportunity is the key, not wealth. Because what do they do with the wealth? You have $50 billion, 60 billion, 100 billion, 204, what do you do? It's all a myth. As long as the wealth is productively deployed, in whose name the money is irrelevant. It's very easy to arouse envy. It doesn't really help. What is important is, do you have income earning capacity? Do you have the ability to fulfill your potential? Can you and your children compete with anybody irrespective of the origins? Do you have a harmonious society? Is might is right, or is there rule of law in the country? These are the practical consequences. Wealth is an illusory concept. It's a piece of paper. It means nothing. All the wealth in the world is not going to help you if you're in Sahara Desert. So it's a piece of paper. Because of our insecurity, inborn insecurity, we want more and add another zero, another zero. All of us are, me included. So, but don't worry too much about that. Thomas Piketty and others argue about that, and they make all nice song and dance. But the truth is, the world is getting better. A man called Hans Rosling, a Swedish physician who died some years ago, he made this point repeatedly, this point I've been making for 30 years. He made it more elegantly based on evidence. He pointed out that Egypt is today. In one person's lifetime, and Egypt has become a Sweden. That is the kind of world in which we live. Are we taking advantage and making our country a Sweden in 20, 30, 40 years? That is what really matters. It's not how much money you want to chop off these fellows and take away money from them. It doesn't help. It simply doesn't work. And not particularly in today's world. The moment you say, I want to take away your wealth, they will all migrate from this country. You can stop them by force. What kind of a country do you want to build? See, these are all, any policy born out of envy and anger is bound to fail. You have to look at society, see how best I can create conditions for this wealth to be deployed productively. As long as Ambanis and Adanis spend the money for India's infrastructure, India's economic growth and productivity and jobs, I'm okay. Origins are bad. If you have the rule of law framework, you make sure that the origins are good in future. But don't talk too much about it. But utilize that wealth effectively. I know it requires a lot of mental discipline because it's very easy. That fellow has 1,000 crores. The other fellow has 10,000 crores. No, it's very added. After some time, we don't even understand what is 1 lakh crores and 2 lakh crores. So don't worry too much about it. It's incomes, earning opportunities, and skills, ability to fulfill potential, and the social conditions for us to have an equitable society where might is not right. That is what matters. I know there will be many people who are to old communists will fight me and chop off my head, but we'll debate that. I think it's already answered by history, but I'm prepared to debate that, not today. Okay? All right. The second question, education. The problem is insecurity of parents, but I think things are improving. Things are improving because parents increasingly realize there are many opportunities for success. I played a significant role in the creation of the educational policy, national education policy. Just 2-3 weeks ago, I had spent an hour and a half with Dr. Kasturi Rangan, who was the architect of that. We had a luncheon meeting together. So we discussed offline. But I think things are getting better. One of the problems with education is, irrespective of whether IIT or something else, an education devoid of skills, just as school education has failed, in higher education also is largely failing. Let me make a very controversial and very sharp statement. If 80% of universities of India are shut down, the country will not notice. Except giving the certificates and pieces of paper, it's not having a tangible impact on the country. So we require a significant educational reform. Next.
Sir, before Manjeet from back, please give the microphone here.
Fast.
Can I have
one question.
Yeah, please.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Monica from Kasturba Gandhi College. Sir, my question is, as of now, many merit students are not getting chance to work in government sectors because of reservation. Sir, don't you think it is also affecting economic and income in India? Can you please comment on it?
Your name?
Monica.
Monica. First, let me take this in two parts. Employment and government. One of the tragedies of India is the notion that government is for employment. It's an unmitigated disaster. Let us assume there are 100 positions. Let us assume there are no reservations because we think reservations are a problem. I'll come to that later. 1 lakh employed, they're unemployable after spending 3-4 years for the stupid examinations. We are thinking that government is not the answer at all. Look around you, Monica. This room, your body, or your home, or your college. Is there one thing here produced by the government? The microphone that I'm using, the pen I have in my pocket, or the glasses, or my clothes, or my shoes, or the sofas here, or anything else. Is there one thing here produced by the government that you need? Zero. Employment comes from where? From production of goods and services necessary for human consumption to meet human needs. Say that in your memory. Think of every word. Employment comes from production of goods and services necessary for the society to fulfill their needs. And we are pretending because of colonial background and socialist baggage that government is the employer and it's a good employment. It's a dangerous employment. Disgusting employment.
The feeling is government job मिल गया सुकून से बैठ सकता है.
Exactly. At the cost of society. Making them parasites. Some are working remarkably well. There are many people in government, in politics and administration who are doing an exceptional job. I'm proud of them. I celebrate them. Whenever I hear of them, I telephone and especially pat them on the back because they require encouragement. But they are a hopeless minority. So government is not the answer. Out of 100 people employed, only 3 can be employed in government. Shameless parties and governments advertise this now. Andhra Pradesh, mega DS recruited. If 11,600 students actually benefit, I'll be delighted. The second part, yes, still some people require to be in government with intelligence, with passion, with ability to make a difference, to transform the country. But go with that intention, but not as a source of employment. And reservations is one of the great myths of our society, that they are affecting it. The problem of reservations is not because, it's not true to say because of reservations the government efficiency is coming down. Some of the finest officials I worked with, some of the finest officials who taught me all the issues of governance at the practical level were from Dalit background. I would not like to mention names now specifically. One of them in particular, he taught me almost everything in executive capacity, what and how I should do it. Your background makes no difference. You don't require 150 IQ for government employment. You require moderate intelligence, good heart, common sense, and application of your tools to benefit humanity around you. It doesn't require geniuses. It's one of the great myths. Now, reservations, it's not that it's not problem, it's problematic, the way it's implemented. When Baba Sahib Ambedkar introduced reservations, the idea is that because there's no opportunity, we'll give it time. Meanwhile, we'll create opportunity without having to go for reservations. That's why 10 years they said. Our idiots made that permanent and guaranteed that the beneficiaries of reservation are unhappy. Those who don't get are unhappy. It requires genius to make everybody unhappy. Because what's happened is, in the name of reservations, the collector's son, and give you an economic opportunity. If I give you an educational opportunity, you can overcome the discrimination or disadvantage by birth. That's the logic, otherwise reservation is irrelevant. Now, if I already am a collector, obviously I overcome the disadvantage. If I want now reservation for my child, at the cost of the laborer's child, or the truly poor person's child, what am I seeking? Is it reservation for the community or personal gain at the cost of the rest of the community? That ought to be done. We have to have the courage to do that as a country. The second is, the real challenge is not that. The real challenge is school education. Reservation applies in higher education and then employment. If school education is a disaster, if you're producing morons who don't know how to read time, who don't know nothing, and then you say, I give you reservation, whom are you benefiting? Supposing you create a condition like in China. I guarantee you, in China, everybody gets up to 8th class free, world's best quality education. Rural, urban, rich, poor, doesn't matter. Everybody is guaranteed a decent education. I have seen it. Any country I go to, normally I ask people about a lot of things. You can judge the level of education, the level of clarity and precision. China is the only country where I found people give accurate answers, very clear answers. You can see the quality of school education. Ordinary Chinese, when they speak with tremendous clarity. If you do that, that means you can then compete irrespective of circumstances of birth with anybody. Then reservation becomes irrelevant over a period of time. We created a monster system where the human potential is not fulfilled, capacity is not harnessed. We pretend reservation is an answer, and those who get reservation are dissatisfied because it's not making much difference to their lives. Those who don't get reservation, remember, there are lots of people, for no fault of theirs, are born in a certain community, in a certain family. They are suffering great disadvantage. If the reservation of the current mode is not working, it's our duty to figure out what is the best way to make it happen, not make it a zero-sum game. Those who don't get reservation benefit, they're opposed to it. Those who get benefit, they're in favor of it. That's a very sad way of looking at society. Be much more deep-rooted, thoughtful. Okay?
Sir, please. My name is Srinivasa, a state professor. So I am a great fan of you. So would you like to share your personal life, sir? You are looking so dynamic, and you are sharing, you are speaking effectively, communicating. Can you share about your personal life? Who is your inspiration? Nice. Because the youth want to share your inspirational. And next one, how to develop your effective communication skills.
To know more about sir, watch the YouTube videos. You will know everything.
You know, the most important thing is not how well you speak, it's how well you think.
Or what you talk.
If you have clarity of thought, doesn't matter what language you use, how flowery or not, it's not very relevant. We have muddled thinking in our country. People speak beautiful language, but their thoughts are completely muddled. So focus on harnessing your mind, clarity of thought, logical, consistent, systematic, evidence-based, and understanding the best practices in the world around you, adapting your knowledge and understanding to the conditions around you. The rest of it, I guarantee it comes from the heart automatically. Some people may speak brilliantly, some people may speak not so brilliantly, but the ideas will have value if the thought is clear-headed. All of us are mentors in life, my teachers and others, they inspired us, but there are three people who I regard as my mentors. Each of them became a great personal friend later on. In each of those areas, I had the privilege of making a significant contribution to this country because of the inspiration I derived from them. One of them was a man called Rajinikanth Aroli. Almost nobody would have heard the name. He was a great physician. He and his wife graduated from CMC Vellore, went to Johns Hopkins and then did their post-graduation in surgery and obstetrics gynecology respectively. Came back to India, went to Jamkhed in Ahmednagar district of Maharashtra and established a very viable primary healthcare system for that whole taluk. I was deeply influenced by them. And because of the influence, a lot of my time I devoted and I continue to devote for the cause of healthcare in the country. And I'm privileged to be the architect of the National Health Mission. I wanted to be much bigger, but the Prime Minister and the Planning Commission Deputy Chairman, they said, Jayaprakash, you are too radical. Let's think of something more modest. I said, beggars can't be choosers. Whatever is possible, let's do it. So that's how we came up with the National Health Mission. But a lot more remains to be done. Another man who influenced me in my life is Dr. Varghese Kurian, whose name is very familiar to many people. Now it's because of Kurian's influence, I developed deep understanding of cooperatives and the need for autonomy and the liberty. And I am the architect of the 97th Amendment to the Constitution of India, liberating cooperatives from the clutches of government. So during Kurian's lifetime, I had the privilege of giving this constitutional amendment saying, look, now, thanks to your inspiration, this is a constitutional reality. And much more happened in between, but I'm talking of the big things. Agriculture, the man who inspired me most was a man called Sharad Joshi, Shetkari Sanghatan. He really understood agriculture better than all the emotional farmers. Now, many people are well-meaning, but they have no understanding of what agriculture is and what to do. Sharad Joshi understood. And I was inspired and influenced by him. And I was the person who eliminated the trading restrictions within the country. In 2011, I conducted a Padayatra fighting against restrictions. I said, you arrest me if you can. And eventually all restrictions within the country were removed. I was the one who got imposition of tariffs for the cooking oil imports because I don't want Indian farmers to be hurt. Have a reasonable thing. It took me several years, but ultimately I succeeded. And several other things related to agriculture. I have been privileged to be part of that. So these three are perhaps some of the most important influences. They also taught me how to think, how to translate your idealism into practical reality given Indian conditions. I'm sure each of us has people. Don't admire people in a very sterile way, like a film fan or something else. No. Tap their ideas and get all the knowledge they acquired in a lifetime. And be respectful to those ideas and develop them further and make those things happen. All these three became my great personal friends. In fact, I invited Rajinikanth Taroli to the National Task Force headed by the Prime Minister because I was the architect of the National Health Mission. I decided who should be members. So Rajinikanth Taroli was my colleague member in the task force. Sharad Joshi, very dear friend, but I also used to disagree with him on occasion. There was issues where he used to take a pedantic view. I used to laugh and tell him you are being silly. So that I respect and admire doesn't mean that you are obsequious. You must become their equal. You must earn their respect. And you must develop the ideas further for the country's sake. And there must be tangible outcomes. So I have plenty of people, and every day when I see wonderful people doing wonderful work, my admiration knows no bounds. I have great ability to admire and adore people who achieve genuine success for the country. Small, big, at any level. And luckily for me, the word envy does not enter my lexicon. I am never envious of a human being. I admire people remarkably. They do great things. I admire, I adore them. But why didn't I do it? Never occurs to me. Whoever does anything good for this country, I treat them as our friend and our benefactor. We all have a duty to support them and strengthen them, not be envious and to cut them to size.
Majid.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. And the state government keep on giving some freebies. One country went on giving freebies, now it is begging, I believe.
Venezuela.
Right. Please give it.
No, but broader point is, let's be practical. Don't ask for the moon. You cannot run our democracy without welfare. I don't even want to use the word freebies. It's individual, short-term welfare. There are two broad approaches. One is individual, short-term welfare. Doesn't really transform my life, but gives temporary satisfaction and gives the votes. The other is long-term, collective good. It's not individual, it's collective, long-term. The governments have chosen primarily to meet the collective needs, which we need them to be fulfilled, but we cannot individually fulfill. We are forgetting the role of the government. Government, primarily human society created this institution called government to do things which we cannot do individually, without doing which our lives are miserable. Now what happened is, ignoring the government's primary role of collective goods, they are now making it a transaction. I give the money, you give me the vote. It is disgraceful. Having said that, no democracy can survive without some element of welfare. Because if people are really in distress, we have to take care of them. Our conscience doesn't allow it, and society will not have peace. What is required is not eliminating welfare, having a balanced approach between welfare and growth-oriented, long-term collective good. And therefore, the practical formula is what I have enunciated today. Under Article 293 of the Constitution, Government of India has the power to decide how much you can borrow. And they have the right and the duty to impose conditions for borrowing. Therefore, the one simple thing that you can borrow, but borrowed money cannot be used for current expenditure. That includes your day-to-day expenditure, that includes short-term individual welfare, that includes interest payments, etc. As long as you are within that, I think the country is safe. And in a federal country, they tell you what to do, what not to do. Suppose Modi says, Revanth Reddy, you spend this money on this and not on this, will we agree? Who is he? We elected our government. So you have to give the freedom to the states, but the boundaries must be rationally and firmly fixed and uniformly fixed. That is the right approach. If you say, no, even the word freebies is pejorative. Somebody born in poverty, in dire need, they are not sinners. We don't need to humiliate them, it's wrong. But all we are saying is their long-term good is important, therefore their earning capacity, their ability to be partners in economic activity is what matters. In the name of welfare, you are actually destroying their future. That is the point we have to make. And the practical formula is no borrowed money for current expenditure, including short-term welfare. I think that's something viable. Okay, Majid.
So thank you very much, sir. Already we exceeded the time. And before we conclude, many of the people may not be knowing that he is one of the important persons, the architect of the RTI, the Right to Information Act, which is such a beautiful thing in the democratic setup. So that's a very, very important thing. I didn't know this. Before I came, I didn't know this. Sir, one more important thing you said, you said you are setting up a science lab which will be used by everybody. Sir, I am interested in that. We have the Exhibition Society office bearers and also OG office bearers are there. I mean, I would like to put across to those people, the OG and Exhibition Society people, could we be a part of that science?
Very much so. Not only one, in fact, once we do it in Hyderabad, I want every district to have. I want everybody, as many as possible, to do basic science and technology in an interesting manner, not mugging up and formulas. Unless we prepare the kids, it's a shame.
As a scientist, I'm really impressed that this kind of beautiful ideas come up. So now we have a pleasant job of presenting a memento, then Telugulo Gnapika antaru. So I request all the MC members of the Economic Committee to please come up. Economic Committee MC members. Arnab, come. Come. Prabhashankar, BN. All the Economic Committee MC members, please come on the dais. We need to, felicitate and thank our speaker for a very enlightening, really, it was thought-provoking.
Okay, no?
Sir, this is a real Gnapika and so that is real Gnapika. I request our treasurer, Vamsha Tilagar, to hand over a fruit basket to sir. Can I now request Rangareddy Garu to give propose vote of thanks?
I am truly humbled to part of this. And Speaker Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan Garu, President, Lok Satta Party, and Gangadhar Garu, President Economic Committee, and others persons present on the dais of the dais. I thought the thoughts of the knowledge of the shared by the Speaker are truly inspiring, and I hope gathering is enlightened with the deep insights of the knowledge shared by the Speaker. I thank you, the organizers of the making of this successful, and I further thanks members of the Exhibition Society, Economic Committee, OGA, press and print media, and staff and students of our college. Thank you, thanking you. That is it. Sorry, yes. Sir, lunch, we will have lunch now.
All the members and students too are invited to join us for lunch.
रंगन्ना प्रिलिमिनरी एग्जाम पास हो गया। हाँ
Very good. Circle sir. Circle sir. Sir.
పిల్లలతో తీసుకోలేదు పిల్లలంతా
Okay, ready, cut.
Sir, okay? I'm sir. हाँ.